the week 30th August till 5th September. These are going to be the topics. I have picked 15 topics. So you can see till 7. These are important in the context of mains. And other things are important from prelims perspective, right? So there are many other topics, but what I feel more important for you people, right? So I have covered the major issues which got repeated in the last week, right? So in the handout for this, I'll try to provide by evening. In case if you're not, otherwise if we couldn't provide by evening, on Sunday when you come to exam, you can collect it, right? So everything which I display here, that I'll get again copy saved like QR code and everything, but printed format will be available by Sunday, right? So don't make any notes, try to understand the things. Soft copy kuda is right? Editing chepinchu. So do you want me to brief the topics of the subjects also, or shall we discuss individually? Okay. So this is important from GS2 quality point of view. This is GS2 governance and quality also. Again, this is GS2, GS4 also. Ethical values are also there. So this may be asked as a mains question. Bulldozer justice. Then we have INS Arighat. GS3, science and technology. Gender budgeting. GS3 economy. Again, this is also economy agriculture. Then black coat syndrome. GS2, constitution and polity. This is from history point of view. This is IR. This is GS3 economy. This is GS2 IR. She box is from GS1 society point of view. Right? So these prelims related facts you can use in different other like subjects. When you just write about any women related measures and all, you can quote these things and all, right, in 1 or 2 points, but these are most important from examination point of view, right? So let us discuss first one. So here recently there is a very good bill that was introduced in Himachal Pradesh Assembly, where they're saying there will be no pension paid for those who defect, right? So that is why no pension for those who defect. Defect means who jump the walls, not the walls of their house or office, but the party. Okay, so whoever jumps the parties or whoever shifts the party, for them there won't be any pension, right? So that's the thing. So that is the reason I gave here. Ayaram and Gayaram culture means Aya Gaya. So for that, for making you comfortable, okay, you can use these type of things in your answers, right? So Ayaram Gayaram we call it. Okay, so there will be no pension for those who generally shifts the parties very frequently, right? So that is the main bill. Here in this context, we'll be understanding anti-defection from polity point of view, right? So first thing, before we proceed, I just wanted to make you clear that there is no provision in the constitution to grant any pension. Don't blame the constitutional framers, okay? For your information, it is we, that means the lawmakers or the parliamentarians, who have passed the pension with full majority. Any bill that was passed till now without any objection is the salaries as well as pensions bill in the parliament. Because there will be a lot of differences when you are getting a bill passed and all. Many parties will oppose, support and everything. But this is the only area where every party will agree, right? So to get salaries and pensions, there is no concept in the constitution. It was passed by simple majority. For increasing the salaries and pensions, it is only simple majority which is required. So in the state assembly, state bill has to be passed. In the parliament, it has to be passed in the both houses with simple majority, right? So in that way, this got introduced, right? So now, as it is also in the purview of state assembly, they have passed in their own assembly saying that there will not be any pension paid for those who change their parties, right? That's the main thing. So when you change the party or when you shift the loyalty, we call it as defection. To prevent defection, we had a mechanism in the constitution through 52nd constitutional amendment in 1985. We have added anti-defection to prevent defection, to prevent party shifting and all these things, right? So that's the main objective. So here the name of the bill that is not required actually, but in case, because This anti-defection is a very common political phenomenon you see in every party, in every state almost. So most of the times they'll be asking a question in GS2 polity. They can ask you what is anti-defection, why this is not still stopping the defections and all, what can be the measures that you need to take in and all. So those type of questions can be asked. In that regard, you can suggest recently one line. That means you are showing the current affairs angle also in the polity. That means recently Himachal Pradesh Assembly has passed this bill. Need not remember the bill. Okay, just quoted that this particular bill got passed in the Himachal Assembly. So saying that no pension, that type of measures can also be taken. You can suggest as an advice also, right? If there is no pension, if there is no salary paid, right? So then at least it may deter some person, yes or no. So that is a welcome measure. In that way, you can suggest it, right? So this is what the bill. You need not remember again. So objective. What is the main objective? To defer defections, right? At the same time, we also wanted to stop pensions. Okay, for those two objectives, to deter pensions and defections, two things. Then, what is anti-defection law? Which is stopping the defections. Defection means jumping. So this was not originally there in the Indian Constitution. So we have inserted this in 10th schedule of Indian Constitution through 52nd Constitutional Amendment 1985, right? So because you know, in the original Constitution we had only how many schedules? 8 schedules. At the present, 12 schedules. 9, 10, 11, 12. What is 9th schedule? It is intended to realize land reforms, but don't say land reforms is a 9th schedule. Anything placed under 9th schedule will be immune from judicial review. Any law, initially to cover land reforms, we have brought that particular thing, but any law which is placed under 9th schedule is immune from judicial review, right? So 9th schedule, 10th anti-defection, 11th panchayats, 12 municipalities. Okay, so that's the thing. So here we have introduced this by 52nd Constitutional Amendment and 10th schedule. Article number 102. Very good. Clause 2. Right? So two types of disqualifications there for parliamentarians. One is on the grounds of constitutional or representation of people's act. Any of the grounds falls under these two, you will be disqualified under 102 clause 1. 102 clause 2 deals with defection related cases. In 102 clause 1, where it is constitution and representation of people's act, who will be deciding? President of India with the advice of election commission. In the other instance, 102 clause 2, who will be the deciding of? Speaker or the chairman of Rajya Sabha, right? The presiding officer of the house will be the final authority to decide whether that is a defection or not, right? That's the main thing. So this clarity, don't only limit yourself to defection. You need to compare, you need to find out how it is similar, how it is different. If you develop that orientation, then you will have clarity instead of confusion. Any aspect you have to link like this, right? That's the reason why I'll add some times also. Then aim, you know, the main objective is here to stop defections, to maintain neutrality, right? So, for example, if you are contesting one particular party seat and suddenly that party has lost the election, that means how can you say that whether the people have voted by seeing you as an individual or by just voting to the party to which you have contested? Can you differentiate and can you clearly say, is it through party or is it through the individual the people have voted for? No, right? That means you are subverting the people's mandate when you're defecting. Yes or no? That's the reason defection should not be allowed, right? Because you don't know whether the people have preferred that individual or the party when they're voting upon, right? So that's the reason you cannot encourage. So that is why to discourage, we have brought this anti-defection law. And you know, ensuring politicians also they have to be accountable, right? So they cannot immediately change the stand and they cannot join the winning party. So these are unethical means. So to stop these things and to maintain stability, right? You know, in the recent times, every party is trying to make sure that there won't be any opposition, right? Opposition has to be very important in any political system because if there is opposition, then only you will have accountability, constructive criticism, right? So for those reasons, you need to have strict anti-defection also, right? But in spite of having the law, why we are not able to do that we'll discuss. Okay. So first thing, why it is needed, right? Before what is anti-defection, why we needed it is ayaram and gayaram, right? Coming, going. And you don't believe on recently, last year or 1.5 years back, one person have changed 4 parties on single day. 4 parties. Morning, one party, afternoon, evening and night. Whoever is giving the ticket and who is trying to take less money from him and all, so he is taking his own terms and conditions and then deciding. Is that the democracy? So that is the main thing, okay? Then curbing money power, right? So if you are changing the party which is giving you more money to spend in the elections, that is also again a ground can be, right? And ensuring cohesion, right? You need to ensure that there will not be any force, or you cannot ensure instability in the political party and all. There should be some stability also. At the same time, responsibility towards the people, loyalty towards the party also is important. Some party has believed and given ticket to you, right? Suddenly if you change the stand, then it won't be ethical, right? Loyal also. So these things are the main reasons. Then these are the provisions of anti-defection, right? So under 52nd Amendment, we have introduced 4 provisions, 4 situations. So one is when any person voluntarily gives up his membership, right? That means if I belong to X party and I voluntarily gives up my membership to that party, I will be defected. Second, if I am independent candidate and if I joins any political party, that means I got elected independently, but later on upon my election, I joined another party, right? So that means again defected. Third, if you are voting or if you are abstaining anything contrary to your party decision, right? So for example, if your party has advised you to vote in favor of a bill, but if you are voting in contrary to your party's decision, that is also a ground for defection, right? Then a nominated member, if he joins any political party after 6 months, this is a watch, right? So before 6 months, no defection. Any nominated member, 12 members nominated by Rajya Sabha, by President to Rajya Sabha, right? So out of those 12, if anyone joins after 6 months of their nomination, that person also will be defected, right? So these are the 4 grounds under 52nd Amendment, which says that these can be grounds for defection, right? Then who will be deciding? As I told you, presiding officer, speaker or chairman of the house. Then who are exempted from these provisions? Speaker, as well as in case of 2/3 members merging with a political party, right? You know, speaker is also one of the member of parliament, so he'll be giving up his membership, not traditionally again. So there may be or may not be also 2 instances. But in UK like countries, there is a mandate that you have to give up your membership, only then you can become a speaker. Because speaker has a role which has to be performed without any partiality, neutrally, right? So generally when you're belonging to one party and you're trying to become speaker, you need to cut down your party affiliations, political affiliations. So that is why speaker generally resigns from his membership, generally, but not necessarily also, right? So then at that point of time, he giving up his membership voluntarily also ground, but for maintaining that office of speaker and his credibility and all, so we have exempted this provision. So this anti-defection will not apply to the speaker's office. Second exemption is when if any party, out of the party, if 2/3 of the members come out and merge their party. Recently, you are seeing this trend also, right? If individually they come, government also will be under criticism. That is why they're trying to grab everyone. You are seeing the resort politics. Resorts, right? You know, every day they're keeping horse trading, resorts and everything. That's the thing, right? So that means if they grab 2/3 of the members and 2/3 members join single party, it will not be a ground of defection, right? Earlier, we used to have 1/3 members splitting from one party is also an exemption for defection, but this was removed by 91st Amendment in the year 2003. Now only these are the 2 grounds which will not attract defection, right? Earlier, even 1/3 members splitting from the party also cannot attract defection, but during Vajpayee's tenure, this was removed by 91st Amendment because 1/3 is easy, right? So 2/3 is very difficult to take in and all. So that is why these things are taken care. Then criticism. In spite of having a law, why you are not able to stop defection? First thing, if you see, curbing dissent, right? Dissent means, for example, if the political leader totally has changed his objective, right? I established the party for these things, I said long back. But today I'm taking U-turn. Okay, so some persons who are sticking to that ideology wanted that to be preserved. Then they're raising the dissent. For example, at that point of time, if I ask you, leave the party and join another party. That means you're curbing the dissent, right? There should be democracy. Dissent also is there. Dissent means the persons who oppose, right? So that means it is acting like a mechanism where the dissent is being curbed. That is also one reason why anti-defection was criticized. Then lack of intra-party. Within the party, there is no democracy, right? So then fragmentation of parties, splits are happening. Shiv Sena is the best example, right? Eknath Shinde and, other faction. Then undermining the representatives, their choice and all. At the same time, controversial role of the speaker. This is most important thing, right? Why? Because who is the deciding officer? Speaker. And he is coming from the ruling party. Will he take any decision against the ruling party? He'll be keeping all the decisions pending. That's the main reason why the speaker's role was criticized so much in anti-defection. The same thing has attracted some other reforms also. That is what I'll explain in the file. Then amendments associated. See, when you're reading polity also, try to take this thing in mind. When you read one chapter, what are all the articles related, right? For example, DPSP. In DPSP, what are the amendments you come across? 42nd, 44th, 86th Constitutional Amendment, 97th Constitutional Amendment 2011, which has added 43B to establish cooperatives. So you have to keep in mind 4 amendments deal with directive principles. When you read about anti-defection, you need to keep in mind 2 amendments, 52nd and 91st. 91st has removed split as one of the exception. At the same time, they also have maintained a norm that the cabinet percentage or the strength you have to ensure is 15% of the total strength of the Lok Sabha, right? That's a norm that is also inserted by 91st Amendment 2003. That means how much can be the size of cabinet? That means 15% of the size of the lower house, Lok Sabha or Assembly, including the Prime Minister or Chief Minister. It's not excluding. They can confuse you there, right? So these are the things which were brought by 91st Amendment. So these are the amendments. Then what are the global practices? So I'm giving 360-degree view about one issue. Try to focus on, right? Global practices, UK and USA. If you see, they don't have any law like anti-defection what we have, but still they have the right to expel the members if they defect, right? That's the system. But in Canada and other countries, if you see, there is no law at all and there is no expulsion also. Okay, so such things are there. But in some countries like Australia and all, there are some provisions like if you change party, at least for a cooling off period, you cannot change another party, right? Like 5 years or something, some cooling off period is there. So those things have to be ensured at least, right? So otherwise, day and night, they'll be changing 2 parties. And then, what are the judicial observations? When you write about any answer on anti-defection, it is very much important to quote this quote. Case, okay? Keheto Holohan versus Dalichu, case of 1992. What is said in this case mainly is the speaker's decision in anti-defection is the main thing, and that decision is subject to judicial review. Okay? In case if the decision of the speaker seems to be malified, that means with bad intention, right? That can be questioned in the court. That's the main observation, right? So that's the main judgment you have to keep in mind. Then reforms. So second Administrative Reforms Commission, it suggested that instead of giving the power to decide to the speaker, give it to the president or governor along with consultation of election commission. Same like representation of People's Act related cases, right? Then remove the role of speaker in deciding the defection because he belonging to ruling party will not work, okay, in that particular instance in providing grace period or cooling off period. So these are the measures which you have to suggest. Another thing you can also suggest is a tribunal can also be established because this is the most important topic which can be expected in prelims and mains. Tribunal means not to decide the cases, okay, with respect to only defection. A bench of having High Court and Supreme Court judges, they can decide better, right? Because they don't have any legislature membership and all. So that is also one proposal that can be examined, right? Then answer this question. Member of a house becomes disqualified under the anti-defection. 3 instances. How many of them are correct? All 3? Answer is C. Any doubts so far? Clear? Then So next topic is legality of lie detector tests, right? You know, in the recent times because of Kolkata gang rape case. So this is so much in news, and whether they're legal or not in India is also the question. In that context, we are going to look into what is this concept of testing the person who is accused of some charge using different scientific evidences like narco analysis, polygraph test, brain mapping. So these are the scientific methods which are generally used. So whether they're legally valid according to the constitution or not. What is the Supreme Court's dimension in this regard? So those will be looking into, right? So first thing here you have to keep in mind, this is termed as deception detection test. Okay. In case in the upcoming prelims, they may confuse you. Instead of asking a polygraph or lie detector test or narco analysis, they can say you deception detection test is a violation of so and so article. That means you cannot get confused. Deception means when you're trying to give misinformation or false information, you're deceiving someone, right? So that particular detection test is including three things: polygraph or lie detector test, then narco analysis, brain mapping. So these are the three common methods which are used to test an individual whether he is giving the correct information or whether he is receiving anything, right? So those are the things which you need to remember. So detect the truth or false. So first thing we have is polygraph test or lie detector test. So the concept is simple, right? You know, we wanted to know whether the person is giving the correct information or false information. So for that, what will be there? So certain instruments will be used. So that will be measuring the blood pressure, pulse rate, respiration, the body sweat and everything, because once you know, like when you are giving the truth, you will be very confident. Your nerves and your respiration, pulse rate, everything will be cool. But when you're giving a false information or which you're giving wrong, then generally you'll get little panic, right? Your pulse rate and everything increases or you sweat generally. That's the thing. So using these things, you're monitoring continuously the signaling and numbering. Based on that, they can assess whether that person is actually giving truth or false. That is what polygraph is, right? Here, it's clear, self-explanatory here. You need not remember what will be the equipment and all, but you need to understand what will be done in the process. That's it. Okay. Then, so as I told you here, when you conduct this particular thing, we are focusing on the psychological response. So understanding that, okay, presumption is nothing but assumption that this person is lying, right? So whether that person is lying or not, based on that, we are testing this thing. Polygraph or lie detector test is same. Okay, it's not like in some movie where Ali will be showing this, it will signal, right? It's not like this. Okay, it's a scientific procedure. Then, so here these things will be measured, like blood pressure, galvanic skin means sweating will start, right? The same time, breathing and pulse rate, etc. These things will be monitored. Then questions will be asked based on the response. Whatever the thing happens internally, stimuli will be monitored. Based on that, they can assess whether it is true or false. That is the one test. Then this is what we call truth serum test, right? So generally in many movies also they'll be using this truth serum. They'll be drinking something, they'll be getting hypnotized, right? So they'll be going into sedated state, right? So in that sedated state, they will be giving all the truth information. Generally, that is the reason alcoholic people also will be telling all the things which they generally do not express, right, in the normal situations, because they go into a seduced state, right? So such thing is what we call narco analysis. So here you can see some injection will be done. Sodium pentanol, a substance will be injected into the human body. Based on that, that person will go into a hyponated state, right? So that means seduction will happen. Because of that, he'll be disclosing all that what is true. So this is one narco analysis test. Then we have brain mapping. Brain mapping means, so based on the response you generally give for truth and false, there will be different types of brain waves that will be generated. So a headgear, you can see the image, right? That is the reason I have included those images. A headgear will be inserted. So based on that, headgear will be measuring what type of waves got released when the person is giving truth or false. So based on that, they can assess. So these are the three types of tests you have, right? But the main question here is, okay, the concept is mentioned here, but legality of the test is very important, right? So whether these tests are legally valid in India or not means, before 2010, Supreme Court said, yes, these are correct only, right? These can be considered as scientific evidences, and considering, like, for example, if you take the custodial torture, right? So that is should not happen actually. But instead of beating the person continuously to tell him truth and all, rather than that, if you go with this concept of testing, it is better, right? That is what the notion that Supreme Court has expressed before 2010. But in landmark judgment in 2010, Supreme Court has said in Selvi versus State of Karnataka case, they said this cannot be a valid evidence, right? So the police may force them to undergo this test without consent also. That is why they have brought certain things here, right? So whatever the things that generally an accused confess before the police will not be admitted as an evidence, right? Because police may beat him or may torture him to commit or to may like you can say like I have done this and all. So they may ask him to agree to this particular thing. So that's the reason voluntary consent is what most important. For that reason, in Selvi versus State of Karnataka, they said these tests are not properly legal. They have to follow certain directions. Directions in the sense, police cannot only take that particular thing. Before that, there has to be informed consent. Means the person to whom you are going to test, that person has to be informed about how the procedure will be done, what will be done, everything. Later on, that person has to give his consent, agreement, right? He has to give his permission. I'm okay with this particular thing and all. And this all has to happen. Whatever the things they're undergoing the test and all has to be video recorded. At the same time, this entire process has to be done before judicial magistrate. Only police if they do, it's not valid. It's not an evidence before the court. Because police may manipulate also. I'm not saying police may, right? So again, don't take me wrong, right? So that's the thing. So it was said in Selvi versus State of Karnataka. Then we also have another case. This is D.K. Basu versus State of West Bengal, very famous case where we study in law. It is about custodial tortures, okay? So handcuffing especially. So in the recent times, if you see, until unless it is a heinous crime like terrorism or anything, we generally are not going for handcuffs, because if you are handcuffing, that is also what in D.K. Basu case Supreme Court said, it's a violation of Article 21, right to life and personal liberty, right? So in this case also, if you are not asking his permission, then it's a violation of your Article 21. So he has to be informed. In all these cases, what is the most challenging thing is 20 clause 3. Because you might have studied in polity, Article 20 deals with protection in case of conviction of some offences, right? When a person got convicted, right? You know the difference between accused, convicted and acquitted. Accused means on whom the charges are there. It is not proven, right? Accused, two instances can be there. Accused may be acquitted, means completely free, or he can be convicted. Convicted means he is found guilty, right? In case if the person is convicted, only Article 20, then it will come, right? Three things are there under Article 20. No ex post facto law. That means you cannot apply law criminally retrospectively, right? For the previous instances, you cannot apply this particular law. No double jeopardy, 20 clause 2. For same offense, you cannot impose two punishments, right? 20 clause 3 is no self-incrimination. You cannot be compelled to be witness against yourself. But here what is happening? Through this lie detector test and all, you are being compelled, right, to give witness against yourself. Yes or no? It may be correct or may not be correct, but this is what is happening. So it's also a main legal issue, which is mainly raised by the human rights or any other group, right? So that's the main thing. Article 20, clause 3 and Article 21 are the main things which are stopping this implementation of such things, okay? Then, so I told you, any person, so when he's silent or when he's not able to cooperate, that is also part of this Article 21. Right to privacy means right to silence, which you people generally exercise most in the classroom, right? When any question is asked, simply Article 21, right to silence, right? So that will be the thing. So if you're compelling any person to make a statement, it's a violation of Article 21, right to life. You cannot compel, I cannot compel, right? Then result of these tests cannot be considered as confession. Confession means I'm guilty. I'm confessing myself that I have done this crime. So anything said before the police without judicial magistrate supervision will not be accepted as confession. It is not an evidence. So as I told you, consent is important. At the same time, judicial magistrate presence is also important. Then National Human Rights Commission, NHRC, in 2000 year, it has given certain guidelines, like the person who is undergoing the test, he should be informed, right? And he also have to give the consent, and at the same time, certain things have to be taken care, like administration, judiciary also. It has to ensure whether the entire procedure is being done correctly or not. Certain guidelines are given. So these tests and have to be in accordance with the guidelines. That's the main thing which we have to suggest. Then what are the concerns here, right? So if you see, different medical journals have conducted different researches and they found that most of the tests are flawed. Okay, so some persons may train themselves in a way, they may beat lie detector test also by becoming like more stronger, even in case of asserting the false statement, right? In those instances, how can you make use of this test, right? That is the reason. So it is uncertain, very flawed approach also, one of the criticism by human rights. Then what is Article 20? We have discussed three provisions you need to remember. In Article 20, does it apply to foreigners or only Indian citizens? I think except B9, B8 and B10 people already have an idea about polity, right? B8 entire polity is done, right? But still not answering with confidence. 14, 20 to 28, simple. This will be applied to citizens as well as foreigners, right? 15, 16, 19, 29, 30. Only citizens. Now, right? Then what about CBI? Is it a statutory body, constitutional body? What type of body it is? Non-constitutional, statutory, executive body, established under Delhi Police Special Establishment Act on the recommendations of Santanam Committee, 1964. CBI has its origins in the World War II time, during British time. To find out irregularities in World War II, British then appointed, but later on after independence in 1964, based on the recommendations of Santanam Committee, we have appointed this CBI under same Delhi Police Special Establishment of 1946. Okay, so that's the pre-independent law, you can say. Although it was established under this act, it was not a statutory body, right? That inspiration was taken from the act and it was created, right? So CBI head will be chosen by a selection panel of Prime Minister, Home Minister, Chief Justice of India. Okay, 3 members will be the selection panel who will decide who has to head the CBI. Okay, the person generally will be having 2-year tenure, right? So CBI is the premier investigating agency of India, right? So different economic offences, crime related things. Okay, you know, in the recent times CBI and ED are so much in news. For that reason, I have taken this also, right? And you know, CBI consent is also so much in news, right? So general consent, specific consent. Have you come across this? General consent means once if the state gives general consent to CBI, whenever the case, okay, a new case comes before the CBI from one particular state, it need not take permission of the particular state government. But if it is specific consent, case to case, they have to take permission from the state government, right? So those are the things which are already in use. Be called again. Then bulldozer justice. So this is an important topic and probable topic for mains also. Ethical dimensions are so much there in this. What is bulldozer justice? Bulldozers, you know, for demolition, right? So in the recent times in many states, we have come across bulldozers demolishing the property of the persons who are accused in a crime or criminals or even the persons who belong to other religion. So, you know, there are different instances where they are criticizing the persons who are eating meat or some other reasons and all. So in that instance, if you see, the bulldozers are being used to demolish the property of all these. And in the recent Telangana also, you have seen Hyderabad, very famous name that was so much in news, demolitions again, which are illegal. That's a different thing, right? But here, just because on the ground that the person is an accused or a criminal, okay, so you cannot demolish his property, right? In that regard, Supreme Court has made a harsh remark, okay? So if the person is accused, okay, that's fine. But if the person is convicted also, let us consider, how can you demolish the property of that person? What about the other family members? Right? They have their certain rights, right? How can you demolish just based on one person and his guilt, right? So that's the thing, and it's a clear violation of the main important concept of this which you need to quote. Rule of law, right? So you know, law has certain rules which has to be very fair. Okay, if you cross anything beyond the law, that's not entertained by the interpreter of the constitution, which is Supreme Court of India, right? In that regard, as you can see here, recent instances, Uttar Pradesh, Delhi, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, in many states, right? They're using this as a political tool also against opponents and all, right? In the many instances, as it was being exercised very frequently, Supreme Court has made a harsh remark, right? You cannot violate such rights, right? In that regard, then Supreme Court ruling, no property can be demolished only on the ground that the person accused or the property belongs to the accused or he is involved in some crime, right? That's the main thing. And even if he's a convict also, one person, okay, if he's a convict, no one can question or no one can deviate from the procedure established by law, right? So procedure established by law is part of your Article 21. What does Article 21 read? Simple right to life and liberty. No person shall be deprived of his life and personal liberty except according to procedure established by law. This procedure established by law concept we have taken from Japan. Connect. Okay. So under procedure established by law, what does that mean? If law is permitting for doing certain things, you can take the right to life and liberty, right? If you are having right to life and liberty, how can you hang a person to death? Death penalty, capital punishments, then his right to life also gets violated. But how are you doing that? It is already authorized by the law, right? We have certain law which is authorizing. IPC is there. If you commit a rape or murder, then you're authorized by IPC, which is a law, to hang that person. So in case if any law is authorizing that person, if he has done such thing and all, you can take his life and liberty. Otherwise, you cannot take any person's life and liberty, right? So that's the main thing. So initially, if you have remembered, this procedure established by law is a very narrow approach interpreted by Supreme Court, right? Because according to procedure established by law, they'll only check what is the law talking about, right? So they don't check whether that law is having any meaning or rational or whether that law is fair or not. Supreme Courts have the main job of interpreting the things. They'll only be looking into whether the law is allowing to do such thing or not. But later on, Supreme Court of the Maneka Gandhi case have taken in 1978, taken due process of law. This concept is US, right, origin. And then due process of law means not only what law is talking about, but you'll also look into whether that law is just, reasonable or fair or not. So these things, that means in the present times under Article 21, any law which is interpreted will be according to due process of law. That is the main thing, right? Then I told you what is due process of law. Under Article 21 only we have principles of natural justice also, right? In 23 prelims they have asked this question. What does Article 21 mean, right? So they have given whether the law is just or fair and reasonable, principles of natural justice, like that they have given 4 options. So you need to understand the essence of that particular provision, right? So principles of natural justice means 2 things will be there, right? So one cannot be judge in his own case. That's the main thing. Okay. Second thing is audi altrum partem, right? That's a legal maxim, but you have to understand without hearing the other side, no one can decide a case, right? No one can be a judge in his own case. That's the first thing. Second thing, you cannot decide any case without hearing the other side. Just based on my complaint, court cannot decide without hearing to the other person that this is correct or this is wrong. So these 2 are the main principles of natural justice which are intrinsic of Article 21. Clear? Then what are the issues in this bulldozer justice, right? So, or bulldozer demolition means mainly it is targeting marginalized communities, like especially minorities, depressed classes. Okay, so that's the main criticism of this particular concept. Then undermining the rule of law, right? You know what is rule of law? It is given by A.V. Dicey, a British jurist, right? So what are the 3 things he said? Supremacy of law means No one is above the law, right? First component. Second component, equality before law. This we have taken in which article? 14. Then individual rights have given the constitution, right? You know, these are the three things which are given under right, sorry, rule of law by A.V. Dicey. But in Indian case, only these two apply. This is not the situation in India because it's a constitution which has given the rights, but not rights giving the constitution, right? That is why third provision will not apply in Indian case, right? Only two will apply. It's not individual right giving birth for the constitution. We have the constitution which is giving you the rights, vice versa, right? Then these will not apply in what situations? For president and governor, equality before law will not be applied. Immunities are there, right? For certain ambassadors and UN related provisions and all. So this is Article 361. Okay, that is an exception for equality before law under rule of law, right? So then it's also a violation of human rights, right? If the person is still, consider him as convicted only. But how can you demolish the property where other family members will be taking place or taking shelter and all, right? It's a clear violation of ethical things as well as human rights. Then ethical things, if you see, punishment has to be proportional. That means if that person has done something, you can award certain punishment. But in case of guilt also, you cannot impose a punishment which is beyond that person, like family members, why they have to suffer, right? So that's the main ethical dimension involved. So the punishment should be awarded only to the person who have committed the crime. It should not be in a way other family members are also getting troubled. Then psychological trauma, right? When generally the people lose their houses and all, you know, in the recent times we have seen Wayanad landslides, floods and all. In AP also recently we have seen Telangana and all, right? So in case because of people, food, clothing, shelter, three main things, right? If any of these things are there, not there, people will be having that trauma, right? So these are the issues which we are facing in bulldozer justice. Then here you need to understand what is rule of law and rule by law, right? So a minutest concept where it can be asked also. Rule of law means when the law is fair, right? That is what we call rule of law. But rule by law means that can be used by governments to oppress the other persons or sections of the society. This can be a tool and it should not be the case. Rule by law. What has to be there? Rule of law. Okay. This only has to be there in any democratic country. In North Korea, like these countries, you know, that is rule by law instead of rule of law. Any doubts? Then what is the way ahead you can suggest? There should not be any culture of fear, right? So, and retribution means eye for eye. Okay, so you cannot impose such things. You should not inculcate a culture of fear among the victims or the convicted persons, or you cannot say, as you have done this, I'll demolish all that. Retribution, eye for eye, cannot be the case. Then principles of justice and rule of law has to be upheld. At the same time, you also have to focus on reformation. In the morning class also I told you. Now in the recent times, in criminal justice system, we are focusing more on not retributive deterrence, but on reforming the individual, right? So we are trying to reform the individuals. So if you just take eye for eye, or if you impose punishments also, we are not able to bring any change in the society. Rather, what you have to do, you have to reform the individual so that he changes his mind for not doing the same offense in the future, right? So that's the main thing which you can suggest as the solution for such problems, right? Because these questions can be asked in mains. Then what is the answer for this? From which particular country we have taken this? British. Then next topic is INS Arighat, right? So you know in the recent times, Indian Navy has commissioned India's second nuclear submarine called INS Arighat. Then what is first? INS Arihant. Okay, it was commissioned in 2016, right? So this is the second nuclear power submarine, right? You know, India allocates lot of money to defense, right? Because defense is the most important thing when we have two hostile neighbors like China and Pakistan in the immediate neighborhood, right? So we need to protect our country, right? So for that reason, you know, the armed forces are there, army, navy, air force, right? Who are the supreme commander of all these? President of India, right? So that's the main thing you have to keep in mind. So in Indian Navy, they have certain things to defend the country. One concept is where they'll be using submarines. So these submarines, they will be immersed in water completely, and they'll have some missiles equipped with them. They can launch underwater attacks also. That's the reason why any country is developing its submarines. But what is the main thing you have to understand? What is the difference between diesel versus nuclear powered submarines? Traditionally, we didn't have our own technology to develop submarines. At that point of time, we used to take Russian help, right? Russia is a very good partner in defense, right, to India. So we used to take Akula class submarines from Russia on lease. That means on the second hand basis, you can say. Whatever the things they have used and they're not using, they're taking that, getting repaired, and we are using for our navy, right? But using any other country's technology is not good for defense, right? We need to indigenize. That is the recent times also. Indigenization is happening more in the defense. Atmanirbhar Bharat, Make in India, Self-Reliant India, right? So that is the reason we started developing our own, right? Later on, with the help other technology, like other countries are helping with the technology and all. So we started making diesel-powered submarines. First step. What is the problem with this then? So generally diesel-powered submarines, once if the fuel is out, okay, they have to come to the coast again to refuel. Submarines concept is still, it has to be underwater. But suddenly when the fuel is run out and all, they have to come again and refueling. That's again a violation of the main concept, right? At the same time, diesel submarines to run, okay, so they need to have that combustion, right? Burning. So that burning happens only in the presence of oxygen, but these has to submerge in a very deep, okay, state where there will be not oxygen. So every time when they wanted that combustion, they have to come up and they have to go down. That's the main disadvantage in the diesel powered submarines, right? That is the reason in the recent times we are going for nuclear powered submarines. In that regard, we have developed this second nuclear powered submarine of India, which recently got commissioned, right, into Indian Navy. So generally, once if a submarine or any equipment is generally manufactured, it will undergo a lot of trials, tests and trials. Later, once if we found everything is going on smooth and all, then only we'll be taking that into Indian Navy, right? Commissioned is different, manufactured will be different. Manufacturing may happen 4-5 years before, but commissioning will happen after test and trials, right? So here, as we said that this is a nuclear submarine, what is the fuel for this? Nuclear. What is the particular thing? Especially isotope of uranium, uranium-235, right? So you people will be learning in SNT anyhow nuclear technology. But first thing you have to remember is naturally uranium will be available in uranium-238, right? So it will have almost 99% of uranium-238, which cannot burn on its own. It is not efficient, and we'll be having very minutest element of uranium-235, right? So we want 235 to be more because it can burn more, right? So then what we'll be doing? We'll be using uranium-238. We'll be burning it. When it is burned more, then we'll be having uranium-235. That will be using as a fuel for generating electricity in this particular thing, right? So it is uranium-235. This is a fuel, main element of fuel. But what is the process through which this is generated? Fission. Okay, fission means, see, this is uranium-235. Okay, so when neutron, in atom neutrons will be there which are having no charge. So that will come and collide with this uranium-235. So it will split into two smaller atoms. Again, these are also isotopes of uranium-235, 235 of smaller size, along with some other neutrons will be released, because when it is decreasing in size, neutrons have to be released, along with some energy also gets generated, right? So that energy will be used as electricity. It's a nuclear fission. Fusion means when two smaller atoms fuse together to form a bigger atom, uranium-235 again, right? So that's the thing. Those you will be reading there. But first, limit here because we have very less time, right? Uranium-235 will be the fuel, and it is through nuclear fission process, right? So then what are the advantages of going with a nuclear submarine, right? So here you can see it is completing India's nuclear triad. Triad means what? Where you can attack from land, air, sea. Okay. So where you can attack from three things, land, sea and air, we call it as a triad. So from land, we can have Prithvi missiles, Prithvi 2, Agni 1, 2, 3, 5, 4 is not, Agni 5, ICBM, Intercontinental Ballistic Missile. So all these are launched from land, which are nuclear missiles, okay, ballistic missiles. So that is land. Air, Sukhoi fighter jets we have, those are also having nuclear powered things. At the same time, sea is this INS Arihant or Arighat. So these type of things are nuclear capable submarines, right? So in that way, now getting the sea also realized, we have completed India's nuclear triad. Then what is nuclear deterrence? Deterrence, just now I told you in the previous concept also. Deterrence means to stop something from happening, right? So why India has developed all these nuclear weapons? You know, nuclear energy, right? So any country, like across the world, if you see, nuclear technology can be used for energy, weapon making, and other applications like medicine also will be there. But most of the countries will avoid any country which is developing nuclear weapons. But in spite of that, why did we test Pokhran 1 and Pokhran 2? 1974, Operation Smiling Buddha. 1998, Operation Shakti. May 11th. That is the reason we made that as National Technology Day, right? Why? Because it should act like a deterrence, right? If you have seen 1962, we have India-China war. India got defeated. 1965, India-Pakistan war. In the 3 years gap, right? So we have learned the main thing that China is developing nuclear weapons. If China, which is in the immediate neighborhood of India, had nuclear weapons, and if we are not having, right? If a person is sitting idle without arms, and if a person is having some weapon, at least a blade, whom is easy to attack? The person who is not having any weapon can be easily attacked. Yes or no? To act like a deterrence, because China has given the technology, and Pakistan also developed its own weapon. When these two countries are having, they can anytime attack India. Okay, to stop them from attacking, deterrent. Okay, we have developed nuclear weapons, not to attack any country, but to protect ourselves against the neighboring countries. So that is what nuclear deterrence. India has clearly adhered to the policy called no first use policy. Very, very important policy of nuclear doctrine of India, right? No first use means India will never use nuclear weapons in the first instance. It will not attack any country. Whenever any country attacks India with nuclear weapons, we will attack in the retaliation, right? If that is the case, will any country try to attack India? Initially, if they attack also, they know India will attack. So is that easy, right? No, that is the reason. To ensure nuclear deterrence, we had these type of technologies. That's the advantage. Then establish balance between this peace as well as stability in the region, right? So we'll have peace. Otherwise, if one country is having, another country is not having, they'll attack. It will lead to a conflict and everything, right? So to ensure peace also, every country, okay, need to defend itself. Okay, many of the persons, they'll consider North Korea is doing very wrong and all. But according to my own perspective, I consider it to be correct. Because if the small country is not developing such weapons, it is easy for a big country like USA easy to target, right? Any country has to protect and defend its own, right? It's not wrong in that particular domain, right? Doing an attack on another country and all, that is another matter. But defending you is very important, right? You have seen even Parliament pepper spray, long back, right? Even parliamentarians also had their own weapons of defense, right? That's the thing. So it also plays an important role in the security of the country, right? So these are the advantages of having a nuclear powered submarine. So this is what the structure. You need not remember, but only thing you have to keep in mind is, so here we have 4 missiles. No? Whenever they wanted to attack, these missiles will be released. So what are these 4? K4 Sagarika missiles, right? K4 nuclear capable missiles. Sagarika is the name. It has a range of 750 kilometers. K4. Okay. Don't get confused. 2 types of missiles can be loaded in this submarine. K4 Sagarika is the name. You'll be reading this in defense technology. 750 kilometers is the range. K15 also is one type of variant you can say, but this had 3,500 kilometer range. Sorry, I told the reverse. Okay, fine. So that is the case. Okay. So these are 2 nuclear submarines only, nuclear missiles only, which can be embedded in the submarine, right? So these are the two things you have to keep in mind. Other things are not important, right? Then in prelims they can ask you who have built this shipbuilding center Vishakhapatnam. That is the agency, and it is almost having weight of 6,000 ton Arighat class ballistic. Okay. So what is ballistic missile? No. Two types of missiles we have, just confined here. Ballistic means which takes a parabolic path. Okay. So that means, for example, if you are launching missile from this, okay, it has to hit a target here, right? Then why can't we target like this? Civilians like us will be there, no, our homes and everything. What will happen? Instead of bulldozer, missile justice we have to discuss again, right? So that's the reason they'll be sent into the higher elevation. It will cross the atmosphere, re-enter into the atmosphere, and then strike, right? So here you can see they even can go a range of even 3,000 kilometers, not 3,300 kilometers. And up to that extent also they can go and they can come back, right? But what is advantage is, till here only you need to give the thrust for the missile, the fuel, right? Because after reaching this point, under the influence of gravity, it will come down, right? That's the beautifulness of the ballistic missile. So Agni is a ballistic missile, right? Then we have cruise missile. This is a cruise missile, which will not cross the atmosphere, right? It will not go for higher ranges also. If you want to target short range, cruise missile, but if you wanted to target an attack which is on the longer edge, that is ballistic missile, right? So when you see from the enemy radar's point of view, which is easy to detect, will ballistic missiles will be easily detected under enemy's radar or cruise missiles? Here you're crossing the atmosphere means you're going into global airspace, right? So it is easy to detect, right? Ballistic missiles instead of cruise missiles, right? Here you're not going into radar of any other country, you're cruising it in the country's territory only, right? So that's the reason. It will be, yes. It is going, again coming. So within the country, if you are attacking, then it will not be the case. If you are targeting outside the country, for example, if any infiltrator come into the country or one particular base, if you want to destroy, then it will not be the target, right? Otherwise, if you are targeting cross border, then it will be a problem, right? So that is also ballistic missile. So we have seen 12 K-15 SLBM means submarine launched long ballistic missiles. Okay, so SLBMs will be there along. This is 750 kilometers and K4 is of 3,500 kilometer range. So current fleet, if you see in Indian Navy, how many submarines we had? 2 nuclear power, Arighat, Arighat. Arighat means the destroyer of the enemy, right? And 16 conventional submarines means 16 diesel submarines are there, right? So diesel of 16 and 2 nuclear power submarines. These things you have to keep in mind. In how many countries already had nuclear submarines? If US have, Russia will have, right? Then UK, France, China, now India. That means India is the 6th country to have nuclear powered submarine on its own. These type of questions can be asked in prelims because UPSC already had the tendency of asking how many, like what is the position that India had achieved with this feat and all, or prior to this, how many countries had this and all. So right, so these things you have to keep in mind. India became 6th country. So advantages, second strike capability. You know we don't strike in the first instance. No second, no first use I told you. That means second strike. At the same time, missile reach also can be expanded, right? So we are having advanced nuclear triad. So what is the way forward? Indigenous submarine development has to be promoted. We cannot rely on foreign technology, and strategic partnership and modernization has to be done. Submarines, that means buoyancy, yes, that's the main concept. Not so deep, no. If you go so deep also, again you will be not having oxygen and everything. So it will not go to a very deep level, but it will be there in a level which is hiding in it. Like it will not be visible to the enemy. That's the main thing. Because if they go so deep also, again they have to take so much fuel to come up again and all. So that's another thing. They'll be there in the shallow waters only, but hidden position. That's the main thing, right? Then this is a question, right? That is the reason I'm telling you in 2022. What are the maritime security challenges in India? Discuss the organizational, technical, procedural initiatives taken to improve maritime security. Maritime means with respect to Navy only you have to write, right? That's the reason these topics will be important, right? You can write this. Is it clear? The next topic, which is also in use, is gender budgeting from economy point of view. Right? Gender budgeting means not free buses for women. Okay. So giving more allocations for women. Right? So in the budget. Right? So that is the reason sometimes economic survey or budget also will be called as pink budget. Right? Pink means associated with women. Right? That's the thing. Why? What is so significant here is, so first time entirely, if you see over a period of time, because this concept was introduced in 2005-6, gender budgeting and all. Since then till date, this is the first time we have reached 1% of GDP allocation given to gender. 1% of our GDP was allotted to gender. That's the first time. That's the reason this is also a potential area where mains question can be asked, right? You know, again, women related crimes and everything are happening. In that also they can relate and they can ask you a question, right? So what is gender based budgeting? When you allocate certain things for the women, right? So, and you know, in the recent budget, our finance minister and prime minister also said government has 4 castes: 4 women, youth, farmers, right? 4 castes: 4 women, youth, farmers. Okay, 4 castes for the government, right? That means major budget is centered over these 4 areas, you can see, right? So that's the main thing. And gender budgeting means where we are focusing on women-led development, Nari Shakti, you can see, right? Then overall allocations, if you see in the present budget, it is amounting almost 3 lakh crore for the women as well as child also included under women, right? Because women and child development together we have a ministry. That's the thing. And if you see, compared to 2014 to almost 25, you see, there is an increase of almost 200% in the gender allocations in the budget, right? So first time we have reached 1% of GDP in terms of allocation to women and child, right? Then if you see what is gender budgeting, where you're using gender consideration in budgeting terms. That means thinking about the women and their related problems, how to address if you allocate certain things, right? What are the problems that women generally face? Okay, sexual harassment is one. Then health, nutrition, education, lack of development, empowerment, okay, skill development is also not there. So these are certain issues, right? So to tackle these, we have many programs launched by governments, right? So again, to address all these individually, we need to allocate certain things. So I have given what are the schemes also. But remember, this concept was introduced in 2005 and 6. Till then, in India, we didn't have any gender budgeting policy, right? So then analyzing and allocating the budget resources in a way which specifically targets the needs and priorities of the women is called gender budgeting, right? So it is a gender sensitive budget also, you can say, right? Then in the recent budget, if you see last year 23-24, this year budget is 24-25, right? So previous gender budget, if you see, almost 5% of total budget allocation, 1% of GDP, that's different. Out of total budget allocation last year, 5% was given to women and children. But for this budget, it has crossed 6.8%, right? That means compared to last 5%, now we have increased more allocations to the women and children, right? Then in the recent budgeting, if you see, they have given 3 sectors or 3 parts, right? In part A, 100% fully for women, different schemes were launched. Then some 90 to 30% is second category. Below 30% if allocation is done, any scheme. For example, here you can take like Stand Up India. Okay, Stand Up India is a program where you're targeting certain entrepreneurs and all. So SC, ST and women, right? If any of these persons, if one person from SC, ST and one woman, so they have to be given mandatory loans by any public sector banks. So that's a scheme, but not purely entitled for women, right? In those situations, what happens? Women also get some benefit from that particular thing, but it's not purely aimed at women. So they belong to part C and part B category, right? So that's the main thing. Then what is the significance? It will increase women-led development, women participation in social, economic and political things and all, right? That's the main thing. And if you see, because of increasing in the budget allocations, we have seen the sex ratio at birth. It's not normal sex ratio at times of birth. If you see from 918, it has increased to 930, right? That's the main thing because more budget allocations, right? It can be like you can see Pradhan Mantri Janani Suraksha Yojana, Matru Vandana Yojana. We have many schemes, okay, which are trying to take care about pregnant and lactating mothers and all. So because of those things, we could get this increase. This is one result. Maternal mortality, you know, right? How many mothers are dying per 1,000 live births? Okay. Infant mortality, 1 lakh, 1 lakh live births there. It is 1,000 here, there 1 lakh live births. Okay. How many children below 5 are dying? That means below their 5th birthday. Okay. If any child is dying, and with respect to 1,000 live, so 1 lakh live births there and 1,000 live births here, right? So now it has decreased to 97, right? It has to decrease, right? Number of women. So then in skill development also women's participation is increasing, especially the program we have is Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. Kaushal means skill, right? So in this also if you see the percentage is increasing, women participation. These are all the things which are saying that there is good result of it. Gen Shikshan Sansthan scheme, 82% of the persons, okay, they got females only as beneficiaries. At the same time, in industrial training, ITIs and all, women participation also increased from 9.8 to 13.3. So these things you can write in any women related answers or essays also. I'll give you the handouts later on. Okay, so in your respective branches, you can take it on Sunday when you write the test. By that time, printed copy will be there. Tomorrow is a holiday, right? Then National Apprenticeship Promotion Scheme. This is from 7.7 to 20.8. So you can code different things. Health one, skill, education one. Like that, if you code one program for each, it will be. So what are the recent initiatives by government in the budget? Mission Shakti, which is women empowerment by MCD, right? Women in child development. So if you see, this was initiated in 21. Aim is mainly to ensure women's welfare and give equal opportunities for women and all. So Beti Bachao, you know, Beti Bachao and Beti Padhao. Educate the child and protect the girl child, right? So then protecting the girl child from female feticides and all, that's the main objective of Beti Bachao, increasing the sex ratio, right? At the same time, Sukanya Samruddhi Yojana, you know, there will be some minimum saving schemes so that that girl after getting 18, that money can be used for her marriage or further education and all. That is also part of Beti Bachao and Beti Padhao. And here one important thing is, it is a combined effort of different ministries. Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Ministry of Women and Child Development, and Ministry of Education. 3 ministries are implementing Beti Bachao and Beti Padhao, right? So then we have Janani Sishu Suraksha Karyakram to protect the infant after the delivery and all. Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana, taking care about the pregnant ladies, their hair, their healthcare and all other things. Right? Then Mission Saksham Anganwadi Poshan, nutrition, right? Anganwadi health and nutrition. Then Women in Science. This is WISE program of Kiran. This is women scientists we are trying to encourage in research and development. So this is also one program, right? You can see these many women they got trained as scientists and all. So what is the way forward? This is a main tool which you can use to reduce the inequalities in terms of gender in social, economic, political angle. In that way, you can write a concluding note. So is this concept clear? Then next topic we have is Digital Agriculture Mission, right? Care economy, right? You can write. See, that is the reason most of the times women are limited to pink collar jobs, right? Care economy, all these things you can write. And women are most unpaid also for the household work they do and all. So those angles also you can write, right? Then Digital Agriculture Mission. The name itself is self-explanatory, right? You are using some digital technologies in agriculture so that you are having it more robust and productive, right? So different technologies you can see here, like cloud computing, remote sensing, okay, artificial intelligence, machine learning. If you are using these type of technologies in agriculture, okay, to increase the yield or to again assess the crop, soil, everything, that is what the Digital Agriculture Mission. Recently, Union Cabinet has given approval for this mission with an outlay of 2,817 crore. Okay, out of which center will pay 1940 crore, and the rest of the money will be paid by states, because agriculture is under state list, right? So here you need to understand it is a centrally sponsored scheme where generally centrally sponsored scheme means center and states have to share the financial burden. States have to implement the scheme. Central sector scheme means 100% funding by the center. Okay, implementation also center only, but central sponsored scheme means where center and states will share the burden, right? So it is a centrally sponsored scheme, right? So here that is the main thing, to promote agriculture tech startups, technology startups in agriculture. That's the main objective, to inculcate all this type of technologies in the agriculture. Then objectives, to transform India's agricultural landscape, you know, right? Previously we used to have more than 50% of our GDP, but now agriculture is having contribution of 18% to Indian GDP, right? Although more than 50% of the persons are still employed in agriculture, but we are only getting 18% to GDP from agriculture, right? So again, we need agriculture for everything. It's a primary sector also, you know, right? So on which only secondary and tertiary sectors will sustain, right? So that's the thing. And we are trying to create a digital public infrastructure, right? So here you will be creating different databases and everything. So that's the main thing. And we also, like how we have an Aadhaar card, same way every farmer also will be given an ID. ID means a number will be given uniquely to that person. So we can have all the related data. Go other, right? That is state specific we have, but now it will be implemented overall across the country, right? So then 3 pillars, AgriStack. AgriStack means it is a digital toolbox, right? So it will contain these type of informations, right? First thing, register means like you have telephone directory which gives the entire information. Same way farmers directory also will be there, but in virtual means online, right? So all the information related to farmers, everything will be in the directory format. Then geo-referenced village maps, okay? So maps also will be, sorry, villages also will be mapped and it will be used for reference for any farmer also, they can have an assessment. Then crop zone, what type of crop is sown, where it is sown, everything can be easily analyzed by governments, right? So what is the main problem in India? In agriculture, everyone will focus only on rice and wheat, right? So when you are focusing excessively on rice and wheat, when there is crop surplus, you don't get price, right? So when these things are getting implemented, when you have a real-time assessment, then we can alert certain areas, right? So from not going for this crop because already many persons are trying to cultivate the same thing. In that way, we can diversify the crops also, right? That's the main objective of this particular. Then Krishi decision support system also will be there, so which will provide information related to weather, forecast and everything. You know, weather plays an important role in agriculture. So timely weather forecast and everything also will be provided to them so that they can take some better decisions. So then there also will be soil profile mapping. Okay, that means soil property, how much is the moisture content, right? What is the nutritional content of the soil? Everything will be given to the farmers using this technology. What is the importance of this particular program? Having reliable and timely updates related to weather forecasts and all, data driven. You will be having entire data collected in databases by central and state governments. It becomes easy for them also to prepare anything, right? At the same time, it also ensures inclusive growth. That means only, see for example, when we had food shortage in 1960s, right? We started importing the things from USA, food grains also at that point of time. And you know, we have introduced Green Revolution. So then we became self-sufficient economy, right? India today is also a self-sufficient economy in terms of certain food grains like rice and wheat. But still, can we say every area in India or every particular region is equally developed in terms of agriculture? No, only few states like Punjab, Haryana and some southern states only got benefited from this, right? Some other states are still deprived of some basic facilities like irrigation and other things. So this will help in decreasing the gaps between different regions by promoting inclusive growth, and employment also will be generated, right? At the same time, resilience means you can rely more on agriculture. That also will increase in future if you can inculcate technology here, right? Then what is the conclusion? It is very important to achieve 2047 Vikasit Bharat. Our Prime Minister Vikasit Lotus. Okay, so that's the thing, right? Then black coat syndrome, right? These type of things can also be asked, right? Havana syndrome. Recently, the spies of USA, they're facing some psychological problems. That is what referred as Havana syndrome. So these terms they can ask you and they can like ask you to pick from the options, right? So black coat syndrome means who wear their black coat? Lawyers or advocates, right? So they're also facing certain burden. That is what President of India, when she addressed some judicial meeting, she said lawyers or judiciary entirely is facing this black coat syndrome. That means when they're facing certain problems, right? That is what referred as black coat syndrome. So a very common and very important topic, because judiciary, it has to be very effective in the country because it can keep a check on the legislature and executive. But certain things are there in the judiciary which is restraining judiciary from functioning effectively, like vacancies, pendencies of the cases, okay, lack of infrastructure, many other things, right? So all these things are what referred as black coat syndrome. That means if any person who is wearing a black coat or advocate, that person or judiciary as a judge also, they're facing certain issues. Those issues are referred as black coat syndrome. Then who is facing the white coat syndrome? Doctors or patients, right? So that's a white coat syndrome. So the President of India here referred as culture of adjournment. You know, like traditionally in any movie also if you see, court is adjourned, right? That's the main thing. That is keeping the cases to get dragged over a period of time. So the culture of adjournment is the main problem that judiciary is facing according to President of India. Then you know, fight for justice. Is justice available for all? If justice is not available at the time or the moment, can you say it is actually available? Justice delayed is justice denied, right? In the recent times, placards in Calcutta case also, that is what you have seen most, right? So any justice delayed is justice denied. After 20 years, if you get any particular punishment for that particular person, is that the justice, right? It has to be instantaneous, or you can say fast track, right? So instantaneous and again, you cannot suggest extrajudicial killings like encounters and all. So you cannot suggest anything which is beyond the constitution, right? Because you need to adhere to the Constitution of India, right? Then, what are the challenges? So this data you can use in any answer related to judiciary. Very good information is given here. Challenges in terms of pendencies, if you see. Okay, in 2023 in India Judiciary Report, a report was released. So in that report, 5 crore cases are pending in all higher as well as subordinate courts. 5 crore cases are pending. Understand the pendency, right? Infrastructure, National Judicial Data Grid. It said almost 19.7% of the district courts doesn't have any separate toilet for women. Infrastructure is also, even not women judges or women advocates are also not having separate toilet, right? You have certain toilets separate. That is also not that. You can understand what are the issues that are plaguing judicial. Judicial vacancies in 23, if you see, in high courts, sanction strength in India is 1114, right? Who will decide the strength of a high court? President of India, right? For a high court, how many have to be the judges? It will be decided by President of India. For Parliament, it is, sorry, for Supreme Court, it is Parliament, right? Current strength of Supreme Court is 34, 1 plus 33, right? So that will be determined by Parliament. That means in future, in case if the need arises, number of Supreme Court judges can be increased by passing a law in the Parliament with simple majority, right? But here it is the President of India, right? So, but here if you see, out of these 1100, you can say 347, 350 are vacant. That means almost only one third we have, one third are vacant, right? Then district judiciary, that means subordinate courts. If you see, sanction strength is 25,081 judges, whereas 5,300 judges are still vacant. So this is giving the data in the real picture. Inclusivity, in terms of inclusivity, if you see, out of 34 judges at the Supreme Court, we only had 3 judges from women, and we didn't have no women chief justice so far. When we are going to have 2027, where BB Nagaratnam, okay, that is also less than a month. That's the only tenure she had as a chief justice. She will have as a chief justice in the future. And you can see in High Court, only 13.4 are women judges. At the same time, in district courts, if you see, somewhat better, we have 36%, right? So these are the percentages of inclusivity. That means in terms of gender, this is also one issue, right? Then initiatives taken already, leveraging infrastructure through ESCR project, Supreme Court Repository Project, okay? Like you can have access to the cases by citing the case number, right? So bench and all, you can have access to all the case information and all, online thing. E-courts also live, you can watch different courts and their jurisdictions and all. And ADR, alternative dispute resolution. So this is very important, right? Alternative dispute means you are settling the dispute other than through the courts. Alternative, right? That means pre-litigation. Litigation starts in the courts, right? So if you are settling any dispute outside the court through mediation, conciliation, arbitration. So these are the three things in ADR. You need not go with this, but just remember the names. Mediation or negotiation, or see, mediation is simple between two parties who are conflicting, they can settle among themselves. Negotiation or conciliation will have third person who is a neutral person to the dispute, he will settle the dispute. So this third person can be any person, okay, without having legal knowledge also he can settle the dispute. But the main difference in arbitration is, here we will be having an arbitrator who is a professional, okay, who will be giving an order like the court of law. That person will be deciding the dispute, right? Mediation is two persons settling their own dispute. Mediation, negotiation or conciliation means three persons, okay, two persons to the dispute. One neutral person will be settling the dispute, but that person will be any person, not having any judicial also can be a person. But here arbitration means arbitrator will be deciding the dispute. That person, whatever he passes, it is called as an order. Order is same equivalent to the court order, right? So with some legal, that is why in the recent times arbitration councils are also established across the world. Then fast track courts. So that is also one solution to solve the pendency of cases. Yes. So these are the things which you have to suggest. Way ahead, you have to decrease the workload. What you can suggest here, you can also establish Supreme Court benches also, regional benches, right? So there is more, this recommendation is there on the cards from long, like in Delhi, the main branch of Supreme Court will be there, which will decide only constitutional cases, right? In other areas like you have north, south, central or eastern and western, four branches if you establish, they'll be deciding the local cases, right? Justice has to be accessible also, right? A person from Kerala, if he has to go all the way to Delhi and file a case, is it possible? So that is why you have to ensure that workload is also decreasing on the Supreme Court. At the same time, capacity augmentation also has to happen. Then judicial vacancies have to be immediately solved, right? So then pre-litigation, dispute resolution. Pre-litigation means before the court fight starts, litigation. Before that only, if you start dispute resolution through alternative, other than courts, if you settle the dispute, I told you just now, mediation, conciliation, arbitration. So these are the pre-litigation settlement of disputes. So for this you can write, this is also on the cards. All India Judicial Service, right? If this has to be created, how? Right? So, who is having the power to create any All India service? Rajya Sabha can initiate under Article 312 with 2/3 of majority present and noting. It's not other way, right? This was already asked in UPSC, okay? With 2/3 of members present and noting, that resolution has to be accepted by Lok Sabha, right? So, when it is accepted, what generally happens? New All India service can be created. So, we initially had only IAS and IPS. Indian Forest Service was created in 1966 using this method on 312. Okay, so currently only 3 All India services have, and to again decrease the vacancies, this is also one proposal, right? Many times it was suggested. Then coming to prelims facts, 5 minutes I'll take. Okay, so this particular area, this is area where we have this Lothal. Okay, so Gujarat region. All of you might have aware of this particular Indus Valley civilization or Harappan civilization, and Lothal is one of the Indus Valley site in the state of Gujarat, right? It was in news because recently IIT Gandhinagar, so they have conducted a research and they found there is a world's oldest dockyard. Dockyard, where you will be parking the ships and these things, right? That was recently found. Okay, what was found is this Lothal. What type of questions can be asked in prelims is, what is a river which is passing through Lothal and all? It is river Sabarmati. Sabarmati is a west flowing river, right, which drains into Arabian Sea. So these things you have to connect with geography there. Lothal once used to have this Sabarmati river in the very close by, and river changes its course over a period of time. Slowly, it has gradually moved away from Lothal. But because of that Sabarmati river only, there is a continuous trade with other parts, and even with Dholavira, which is also one of the UNESCO World Heritage Site, 40th site in India. Okay, with these other Indus Valley sites, or even the Roman trade and everything existed because of that Sabarmati river closely passing through Lothal. That is what the research people have found. So you have to keep in mind, Lothal is one of the southernmost sites. Daimabad is the southernmost, right? Daimabad in Maharashtra. Have you come across this? Northern, southern, eastern and western? Tell me. Northern, Manda in Jammu and Kashmir. Southern, Daimabad. మీకు క్లాస్ చెప్తున్నట్లేదు, నేను రివైజ్ చేస్తాను. ఈస్టర్న్, Alamgirpur in UP, Western, Sutkajandar in Pakistan, right? So these are the four northern, eastern, western and extremities of Indus Valley civilization. So Lothal is considered to be one of the southernmost, right? Above Maharashtra, Gujarat. So it used to be a very prominent trade center at that point of time, where we have beads, gems, etc. and got traded there. And Lothal in Gujarati language means the major mound of dead, where burials, right? So that's a translation of Gujarati term. And same is the case with Mohenjo-daro. In Sindhi also, same meaning. And it is the world's earliest known dockyard. Very important, right? So if these things are that, they can ask you, because IVC is one of the important and favorite team of UPSC. Every year one question will be coming from IVC. And it is passing through, so the Sabarmati river is passing through this particular thing, right? Next topic we have is SCO meet, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. A main thing you have to keep in mind. So recently, Pakistan, okay, so has invited Indian Prime Minister to participate in Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, which is going to be held in Pakistan in the month of October, right? And we didn't have good relations between Pakistan and India in the recent times after 2019 Pulwama attack or Uri attack and all, right? So our Prime Minister clearly stated, talks and terror cannot go hand in hand, right? So those things you can use. So India did not respond as of now. So we don't know like what will be the gesture by the Prime Minister, right? So, but SCO, if you see, it was a political organization established among Eurasian countries, Europe and Asian countries, right? So, political and security, economic grouping also. In 2001, it was established, headquartered in Shanghai anyhow, right? Initially, if you see, 5 countries are part of this. So, here you can see, founding members you can see, Kazakhstan, China, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. Only 5, Shanghai 5, that's the own name they have initially. But later on what happened? Some other countries also joined, like Uzbekistan. So you have 5 here. This Uzbekistan became the 6th member, plus India and Pakistan in 2017. They got membership as 8th and 7th countries. And in the recent times, Iran became the 9th country. So as of now, 9 countries are members to SCO, right? Iran is the newest entry, right? Belarus also have applied, but it was not actually admitted as a member, right? We don't know in future it may happen, right? So this is the first thing you have to keep in mind. But when you come to this already, in last year itself we have G20 also and SCO hosted by India, right? And 2023 Pakistan foreign minister also have attended a virtual meeting when it happened in Goa, right? Through virtual means and all. At that point of time, it is the first visit in last 12 years between India and Pakistan. There is no delegation that have visited each other, right? So that's the main thing. Then last but one topic we have is anti-dumping duty. Okay, so it's very simple. In economy, you will be coming across, especially in trade or external sector, 2 duties, very important: anti-dumping duty and countervailing duty, right? First thing, just I'll explain the concept, understand. In WTO, you need to ensure free trade, right? Barrier-less or barrier-free trade has to be there, right? But generally what happens is, when you're importing certain things, you need to treat that particular product and your country product in the same way. That's what the general rule of WTO. But what happens is, in some situations, any country will have some tools in their hand to protect their domestic market, right? For example, if China wantedly, right? For example, if this pen is manufactured in India, and it is in domestic market, and it got like in the market price you can say 10 rupees. But to again trouble the domestic market of India, if China is producing the same type of pen and if it is selling at a cost of 6 rupees, to trouble India and its economy, then it will be imposed with a duty by the central government. 6 rupees plus 5 rupees or extra. That means it has to cross 10 rupees. Otherwise, what happens? People will be buying the same pen of China and our domestic market will be at the risk, right? That's the reason certain duty will be imposed on those imports which China or any other country will try to provide at a lower cost than the marketing cost, right? So that is what we call anti-dumping. Dumping, not to dump in the market, will be imposing certain duty. Okay, that's a exception under WTO, right? Otherwise, it is a free trade that has to prevail, right? When these things are done by any other country, they can use this type of things, anti-dumping duty, right? That is one point. Then we also have countervailing duty. What is countervailing duty? It is also simple in terms of imports only. But what happens is, for example, in China only if this pen is getting manufactured at 10 rupees, right? But if they provide some subsidies to decrease the price of this, right? Subsidies means, for example, if I have to put all the cost, it is costing 10 rupees. But if government is giving any subsidy on this to me in different forms, then I can manufacture the same pen at 5 rupees cost. I'll be selling at the 5 rupees, right? With the same 5 rupees if I sell in the Indian market. Their domestic market also gets impacted, right? That means if any country is giving lot of subsidies which are unrealistic to again trouble another country's market, that will be called as countervailing duty, right? Anti-dumping duty means when it is coming into the country, again to weaken the domestic market, you will be imposing certain duty on the foreign imports that we call as anti-dumping duty, not to flood the imports in the Indian market. Countervailing means if any subsidy is provided by foreign country on the products so that it is becoming more cheaper than it can, right? So then we call it as countervailing duty. So these two are the exceptions granted under WTO, right? Generally these things should not happen, but when any country is trying to trouble another country economically and all, this can be used as a protective mechanism. It's a clear violation of globalization. Yes or no? It's like a protectionist measure, right? So it's a violation of globalization. So this concept you can understand. I have given the differences also here, right? Then last but one we have is Sabina Shoal. Okay. So these topics can be asked in prelims, like what are the recent places in news, what is the reason also. They can ask you mapping. Shoal is nothing but a large group of something, right? A small, like you can say large group of islands or large group of any other thing. We call it as a shoal. In oceans, generally we call it as a shoal. So these are atolls, you can say corals. Corals, you know, right? So they're formed by coral reefs and all. This is located in the Pacific Ocean and it is in South China Sea region. And you know, South China Sea dispute is also going on between China and many other countries, Asian countries, especially Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, etc. So this is a region. So you have to keep in mind, these are the three things, okay? Very, very important. They can ask you in the upcoming prelims, right? So Scarborough Shoal is also within the South China Sea region, Second Thomas Shoal and Sabina Shoal. All these three are again related to South China Sea. Just remember to which region they belong. That's it. They don't ask more. Why China is doing all this bloody nonsense? Because South China Sea is very good reserve of oil and gas and fishing also. And most of the trade between Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean passes through this route only, right? That is the reason China wants majority of the South China Sea under its control, right? Here you have to keep in mind this 9 dashes, right? That is what the China is claiming, but it is not admitted by any other country, right? All this red colored area, it is what China is saying that is all my territorial waters, you know, beyond 220 nautical miles. So 200 nautical miles, you don't have your exclusive economic zone. It will be under global seas or open seas, right? So, but China is extending its domain and saying all this region is mine because good abundance of oil and gas, fishing, major trade route. That's the reason why China is claiming this. Already UPSC asked what is 9 dash line. This with respect to South China. These three are also with respect to same, right? So that is what you can read here. I have mentioned this. Nothing much here. Then last topic is she box, right? So again, by whom? Women and child development, it can be asked. She box means protection of women from sexual harassment, right? So 2013 we had a law, right, Vishaka guidelines is a famous case where Supreme Court has said that we need to have protection or a law for protecting the woman at sexual harassment from workplace. Okay, so at workplace instance and all. So in regard, we are having an online portal in the she box format. Okay, so this is one centralized portal where anyone can complain, right? So most of the times, if they wanted to go and complain, also they'll face that trouble, right? So identity disclosure can be one reason, or harassment can be more also, right? So the boss also can use his influence in getting the things done and all. So for that reason, most of the women will not be they'll be hesitant to complain and all. So if these things are there, it becomes easy. This is also brought in the light of Kolkata rape incident only, right? So here you have to keep in mind, generally under Sexual Harassment Act of 2013, there is a provision to maintain internal committee and local committee, right? Internal committee means at least where 10 or more employees are there in any organization or in employment area. At least if there are 10 employees, then you need to constitute an internal committee, right? Where the women, at least 1 or 2 persons, and one legal advisor, an advocate, will be part of that internal committee. They will be taking the complaints, if any. They'll investigate. If they found any, they have to again inform the police and all. That's the main job of internal committee, right? So that's the main thing you have to keep in mind. Filing the complaints, tracking and taking care about those. That's the main job of this she box portal, right? So it's mentioned here. Nodal officer also will be there, right? So these are the topics, and if you have any doubts, you can ask.